one point or another in everyone's life, they experience what some call deja vu or the Mandela effect. All can be related to glitches in the Matrix. The following stories are all that of glitches of the Matrix, whether it's time loss, things being changed that you remember one way or another. So sit back and enjoy. Number 1. Years ago, when I was around 14 to 15 years old, I started getting involved with ghost hunting and exploring and stuff with some friends, 3 people to be exact. The story is real and not fiction. I saw some weird stuff with my friends when I was involved with this back in the day, and even some while I was even smaller. I have more stories to share, but for now let's focus on this one. It may not be the most creepy of all, but it's the most unexplained one that we had witnessed so far. My theory on the paranormal is this one. If you start to get involved with them, they start to get involved with you. So let's get started with the story. One day in the summer, we went to check an abandoned 2-story house with my friends. We didn't know at the time if that house was haunted or simply abandoned, but we just went to explore. It was around 8 o'clock at night, so it was still day outside, so we could easily see around. In order to get inside the house, we needed to jump from a small wall fence to a small garden it had. We were 4 people there, including me, at the time, and we saw the door was really old and green in color, wooden with spider webs and such, and it was locked with some rusty iron wire. We tried opening the wire with our bare hands, but couldn't open it, so one of my friends had the idea to just kick the door in hopes that the wires would break and we could enter the house. My friend kicked the door open with force, and it opened fairly quickly with one good solid front kick. The door was wide open now, and we could see some of the house. However, when he kicked the door, a big chunk of cement from above the door wall broke and fell down near our feet, making a strong smashing sound and leaving a big hole above the door. This is important to keep for later. We were happy and laughed. We finally were inside. However, inside the house was really small and dusty with spider webs and such. It had 2 mini rooms, one to the left and one to the right, around 3 by 3 in size, so you can guess they were really small, and they were just empty rooms with marble old floors. Nothing special about them, and in front of the door in a 2 meter distance there was one broken black spiral staircase, so we didn't go up to check the rooms above, as it was 3 meters high and broken, so we didn't want to risk climbing it. We were pretty disappointed that after the locked door there was nothing else interesting to see there, so we simply left the house the way we came, leaving everything as we left them, and we went to chill in the park to talk, enjoy a Coke and some snacks. At around 11 o'clock at night, we started heading back home from the park. On our way home, we passed this house again, so we said, what the hell guys, it's late now, it'll be more interesting and more scary, let's go check it again. I forgot to mention that this house was in a narrow road with some people living there, mostly old people and some little kids, so the area around wasn't completely abandoned, just this one house. So we went there again to check it out. We jumped the wall fence, entered the garden, and what we saw left us wondering. What the hell happened here? Wasn't the door supposed to be wide open, we thought? It was like 3 hours before we came in the first time. What happened in the last 3 hours? What we saw was even weirder and completely unexplainable. We saw that the door was locked tight by the same rusty iron wire again. A big chunk of cement was back on the wall covering the hole, like it never fell to the ground and never left a hole. We thought the only reasonable explanation was that the owner came back in those 3 hours and relocked it. The house was really abandoned though, so it's unlikely for him to come visit the house at this time like this. It would be a really huge coincidence if this happened. Anyways, let's say that happened, but how the hell was a big chunk of cement back on the wall in the exact same place that it was? You couldn't tape it or even glue it back to the wall, so how did that happen? We left in a hurry, creeped out, thinking about what may have happened here, and getting really confused. To this day, I don't know how to find a real explanation to what happened that night. Did time stop when we were inside the house, or did we just experience a glitch in the Matrix? What do you think happened? Number 2. One day, my cousin, who I do not really know and haven't met, was staying over at my brand new apartment that I had recently purchased in a very nice neighborhood in Korea. He was visiting so he could do a housewarming. That night, when he came, he brought a basket of fruit and a bottle of my favorite type of alcohol, Johnny Walker Blue. We were just watching TV, some Korean show that had a bunch of hilarious comedians doing stupid things. He fell asleep on the couch, and I just went to my bedroom and started reading a book, Ender's Game. Then the doorbell rang. I got up and went to the door, and when I opened it, there standing, smiling, was a person I'd never met in my life, and I asked him, "Who are you?" He stated, "Your cousin. I told you I was going to be staying for the night." He had a basket of fruit and another bottle of Johnny Walker Blue. Kinda scared me a bit, so I ran into my living room to check. No one was there. My cousin sat down and said, "Why is your couch so warm?" At this point I started getting creeped out, and that's when my cousin handed me a piece of paper saying, "Oh look, there's a note." When I read it, it said, "Thank you and I'll visit again." Number 3. Many years back, a friend and I were walking to my house. We had just been at her house a few blocks from mine and had decided to go back to my house to grab a board game. During the short 10-minute walk, her and I talked about tons of creepy stories, from fiction to experiences we've had ourselves. We love talking about this stuff. Her and I were always so amused by the creepy and unexplained. So, due to our deep discussion, we arrived at my house a little creeped out since we shared so many experiences, but not enough to stop us from entering my empty house. My parents had taken my brother out for ice cream, and we were going to be home within an hour. We entered the house and took the discussion into my dining room for quite a while. I remember looking at the clock and suddenly remembering we were supposed to pick up a board game. I dug in my cabinet for the old board game and almost pulled out the box when suddenly the phone rang. Now, normally this wouldn't be a big deal for the phone to go off in any normal household, but this phone was an emergency phone, one that only rang if all the power went off. I stared at it as my friend stood in the kitchen across from me. Admittedly, I was creeped out instantly, but nonetheless, I made my way to the phone and pulled it off the receiver. It was an old phone, so it wasn't portable, and it was connected to the base by a long coil. I put it up to my ear and squeaked out a "hello?" There was nothing. I stared at my friend wide-eyed and hung up. My friend told me that it must have just been some random person calling who hung up fast, even though it felt strange considering only this phone rang out of the 3 other phones in the house. I opened my mouth to agree with her when the phone rang again. Again, only this phone. No other phone in the house rang. I froze, not wanting to answer, but made myself pull the phone off and put it up to my ear. "Hello," I said again, quieter and squeakier than the last time. Still a silence. I kept the phone by my ear while I shook my head at my friend, but before I hung up, I suddenly heard a loud and annoying sound. The kind the phone makes when no one's on the other line, beep beep beep. But more annoyed now than scared, I remember slamming the phone back on the base. My friend stared at me while we agreed this was getting too weird. So I took a step towards her to leave the area, saying, "It doesn't feel like we're alone." The second that sentence left my mouth, the phone, still hung up on the base, blared with this piercing beeping sound. But it was one ongoing beep. It got louder as it went on. It was a real-life jump scare. I felt my heart jump so high into my throat. Only within a second, I looked at the phone and noticed the red light on, then looked back to my friend who was suddenly gone. I knew she read my mind and had on instinct ran out of the house with so little hesitation. I followed right behind her. We slammed the door behind us and stood on the porch, out of breath with adrenaline pumping through our veins. I remember thinking, what the hell? I slammed the phone on the hook and I knew it hung up. Almost instantly after we ran out of the house, my parents pulled in the driveway. They saw our scared expression and asked what happened. After we told them, my dad, with a questionable look, who could blame him, walked in the house to hear absolutely nothing. There was no beeping, there was no blinking, there was no ringing. He looked at the phone with me. It sat like it always had, hung on the wall, no power. My dad proceeded to tell us the phone had basically been disconnected, so for it to ring like that was impossible. He asked me how this could all happen in less than a few minutes, but I had no idea what he was talking about. Turns out my parents saw my friend and I walking to the house. They said they were literally just up the road and pulled into the driveway not even a minute later. I don't know what happened that afternoon. I don't know how my friend and I managed to hear a disconnected phone ring more than once. I can't even come close to explaining how it felt. How I know my friend and I were in the house for at least 20 minutes, not 3. I can't help but feel this was some kind of glitch in the matrix. How long were we really talking? Were we just creeped out from our storytelling to picture this whole thing? But how do two people feel and see the same things? Is this something paranormal? Number 4. Some time ago when I was in college, something strange happened to me and a close friend of mine. Even though it's been a couple of years, I've still never figured out an explanation for it. Maybe you can help me. One night during our junior year, we were just hanging out in James's dorm room playing Xbox. At this point, I lived in an apartment with 4 loud roommates, and also didn't own my own console yet. So for us, James's place was really the place to be. We weren't exactly party animals or anything, and we spent most of our weekend nights playing video games or watching movies. I should take this opportunity to add, before anyone asks, we were completely sober. None of us drank anything, smoked anything, or used any other kind of drugs. The only reason I mention this is to clarify this experience couldn't have been the result of some mind-altering substance, though I admit it was so weird that it did make me feel like I was on something. So after we'd been playing for a while, we decided to run out for some snacks. We drove down to the local gas station, loaded up on junk food and caffeine, and then made our way back to the dorm. All is well up until this point. Now, at the risk of being that person who gives way too much unnecessary detail, I do feel the need to tell you what the dorm looked like. They were set up in little suites with 4 or 5 people living in each one. When you walked into a suite, you entered the living room. There's a kitchen table on the left, bathroom on the right, 4 white doors facing you, each labeled with the name of the person living in that room. James had a single, so his name was the only one on the door. The door to the left also had one name, and the door to the right had two. James's door was the one on the right in the middle, visible as soon as you opened the suite door and walked into the living room. When we get back to the dorm, we head up to the 3rd floor where James's suite is. We're talking and bullshitting as we walk up the stairs, laughing about something or other that one of our classmates had said earlier that week. When we get to the top of the stairs, we open the door to James's suite. First door on the left, suite 302. The both of us stop dead in our tracks. We've been gone for no longer than 20 minutes and everything is different. I don't mean like the roommates made a mess while we were out different. I mean everything is different. The carpet, which was a neutral light brown color when we left, is now blue. The couch in the living room is a totally different one. There's a bicycle parked in the living room, and for some reason the bicycle is what really stands out to me and nags my brain the most. James didn't have a bicycle. No one in James's suite had a bicycle or rode a bicycle or even periodically borrowed one. I don't know why I was so fixated on the bike, but something about it being there was just so wrong to me. The name on the door directly in front of us does not say James, it says Brandon. The names on the other doors are wrong too. We looked at each other in confusion, and James utters the only sentence that really makes sense to this moment. Where the hell are we? I shake my head, chastising myself for being this confused when it's obvious we might have just been distracted because we're talking and we walked into the wrong suite, right? I tell James as much, and we leave and check the number on the outside of the suite door. 302. It's the right number, but it can't be. We make our way back to the stairwell and look at the floor number on the stairwell door. Floor 3. At this point, all signs, literally, point to us being in the right place, and yet we stand, clutching our gas station provisions and feeling totally lost. Again, I'll remind you, we're stone cold sober, and yet I feel completely disoriented. What the fuck is going on? James asked me as we stare in bewilderment at the floor number, the giant 3 glaring back at us as if mocking our displacement. I can't even describe to you how many jumbled, nonsensical thoughts were running frantically through my mind at this moment. I'm generally an anxious person to begin with, so this incident was a massive bout of mindfuckery for me. I'm bouncing between thoughts ranging from, is James homeless now? Will he have to stay with me? Is my apartment still there? Should we call someone? Who do you call to report a missing room? But for some reason, this is the one I settled on. Did we just die? What? James snaps. Like, did we die in a car accident on the way back from the gas station and we don't remember it and now we're ghosts and this is someone else's room now? Is this how being a ghost works? I hear how insane this sounds as it's coming out of my mouth, and yet I also hear how scared I'm starting to sound. Because as incredulous as his initial what was, he clearly didn't have an explanation either. Okay, finally says, taking a breath, let's just go back outside. Yeah, I agree. We'll just go back outside. 2 college-educated 20-something. Okay, fine, partially college-educated at this point. And this is the best we can come up with. Maybe we're ghosts, let's go back outside. But the whole thing was such a mindfuck. What were we supposed to do? So we go outside, but admittedly we have no plan following that. We look at the name on the building. It's the right building. It's the only resident building on the side of campus, so I don't see how it couldn't be, but it's worth a check. We sit down on the steps of the building, the excitement over our salty snacks and sugary drinks long since forgotten. We look around at the parking lot, and maybe it's just the weirdness of the experience, but I have to admit, it looks a little weird, more barren than usual. There's no one walking to or from their cars, no one driving in or out of the lot. I don't even hear any voices in the distance. I let my eyes rove over the cars, half-heartedly trying to see if there are any I recognize, but it's no use. I don't really know what anyone really drives. So what, like we time traveled? James asked, disrupting the silence so suddenly that I actually jumped. What? You said if we died and just time traveled to the future? No, it's not time travel, it's just that this isn't our time anymore, we don't even know it. Time has passed since we died and we just now woke up and, oh my god, why are we even discussing this? I mean, it sounds as good as any explanation so far. It's just stupid. I say as much to convince myself as James. Let's just try it again. Try again, James echoes. What good will that do? You have any better ideas? I shoot back. He doesn't, so we try it again. Again, two educated adults, this is the best we can come up with. To go outside, come back in again, like that will hit the reset button on the whole situation. The fabled IT sentiment of, did you try turning it off and back on again, echoes in my brain, and yet, it worked. We did the exact same. Walked through the building doors, up the stairwell to the third floor, opened the door on the left labeled 302. But this time everything was right. The carpet is a neutral light brown again. The couch looks familiar. James's name is on the door again. All the names on the doors are correct. There's no bicycle in the living room. Even sounds seem different, as if we just popped our ears after a long cold or coming up from underwater. I can hear a TV from somewhere in the suite, and it's one of the roommates' voices carrying out from his room. We rush into James's room to make sure everything as it should be, and I feel so relieved, almost unreasonably relieved. We both sit down exactly where we were before we left the gas station, and for a few minutes neither of us says anything, just busying ourselves with turning on the Xbox controllers and unpacking our snacks. Although I'll admit, we both kind of look around with a newborn baby sense of wonder, probably both suspecting our surroundings will disappear at any moment. Finally, James once again ventures to asking the question that both of us are thinking. What the hell just happened? I start to laugh and then he starts to laugh, and the tension subsides a little as we joke about how the only good explanation we could come up with was that we died and became ghosts. Eventually, we just stop talking about it and carry on with our night. I go back to my apartment, which is indeed still there. The problem is we never actually answered our own questions. What the hell did happen? Where were we a few moments before? Did we accidentally slip between dimensions? Did we manage to end up in an alternate version of our universe where everything was kind of the same, but James didn't live there? Was it a glitch in the Matrix? Do we really live in some kind of simulation and whoever runs it decided to amuse themselves by fucking with two college kids? I really don't know, and to be honest, a lot of the time I just try not to think about it. James still occasionally jokes about that time we became time-traveling ghosts. There's an unsettling undercurrent to the humor, because as amusing as it is to recount the tale now and then, for me, the question always repeats in the back of my mind. What happened? I hope you enjoyed the previous stories, and I hope you're enjoying the other stories that we're posting. Hopefully the next time you come back, we'll still be here, and we won't slip a glitch in the Matrix.